Pikmin 4 is a real-time strategy game developed by Nintendo and released for the Switch in July of 2023. When originally teased by Shigeru Miyamoto, the franchise's creator, it was stated that the fourth title was near completion in late 2015, though it was quietly delayed for several years with little to no information as to what had happened to it. Eventually, in 2022, the game was officially unveiled in a teaser trailer after the porting of all three prior Pikmin games to the Switch console. This entry was produced by the same branch of Nintendo that focuses on major releases for the Mario, Zelda, and Metroid franchises, and co-developed with Aiding Company, who has worked predominantly with Capcom and Bandai Namco since the late 90s on fighting games for Naruto, Bleach, and several other anime TV series. Longtime Pikmin director Shigefumi Hino did not reprise his role for this entry, instead handing leadership over to Pikmin 3 co-director Yuji Kondo, who had a significant part in programming the AI of the Pikmin creatures since their premiere in 2001. As far as commercial success is concerned, Pikmin 4 sold more units in its first week than the original trilogy had managed in their first weeks all combined, and has reached roughly 3.5 million copies sold on the Switch by the time of this video, outperforming other beloved franchises and long-awaited titles such as Metroid Dread and new Pokemon Snap. With this newest entry rounding up the entire series on one console, now may be the best time to get into the franchise if you've been asking yourself, what's so great about Pikmin 4? The story's opening cutscene is narrated by Captain Olimar, the protagonist from the first two Pikmin games, as he recounts his previous adventure of becoming stranded on an unknown planet and eventually being saved by the help of the indigenous Pikmin creatures. One big change, however, which returning players may be surprised by, is the inclusion of another creature that we hadn't previously seen before, one with a dog-based design, but more about that later. After sending out a distress signal from his last known location, Olimar hoped for salvation by the Rescue Corps, though they also, unfortunately, crash-landed upon arrival to their destination. Now, the last remaining rookie of the Rescue Corps, the player, is sent to find and reassemble the scattered crew. Aside from the members of the Rescue Corps, there are also civilian castaways who traveled to this planet after hearing of Captain Olimar's discovery of vast treasures, though met with their own unfortunate fates amid this world's harsh ecosystem. Upon gaining our bearings and reaching our crashed ship, we discover that the engine has overheated and all of the energy reserves have been depleted. In order to find enough fuel to get off the planet's surface, the player will need to collect shiny objects from which the crew can extract sparklium to power the ship, introducing our new main resource following treasure in the second game and food in the third. The crash site of the main ship, the SS Shepherd, serves as a base camp from which the player can talk with the other members of the Rescue Corps and prepare for various missions. Whenever the player is ready to set out, they'll depart in the smaller SS Beagle to a nearby area to search for treasures and other collectibles. Some of the castaways are individual civilians or adventurers, while others actually form whole groups, such as the Research Task Force and even a high school field trip. The voices for every character are easily discernible with their accents and deliveries, giving plenty of personality to characters that all use slight variations of the same 6 hairstyles, suit colors, and catchphrases. As more characters are rescued, they'll offer specific challenges or upgrade options depending on their respective talents or position within the rescue team. For instance, Russ, the team scientist, can develop upgrades to the player's suit and equipment, as well as various consumable items, such as healing items for Oatchi or objects to throw at enemies. Schnauz, the traveling appraiser, can show the player a complete catalog of every treasure they've collected, categorized into groups and accompanied by comical in-universe descriptions of these everyday items, just like the encyclopedia in Pikmin 2. Similarly, the Piklopedia returns through another early rescued civilian, Dalmo, the animal enthusiast. As more castaways are rescued, larger plots of land at the base camp will be cleared for space, and a growing crowd will gather every morning or evening to see our adventurer off at the start of their next expedition. Now, let's talk about one of the most divisive features of this entry among long-time players, and that would be the new dog-inspired companion, Oatchi, a rescue pup on his first mission with the Corps. Personally, I didn't have any issues with how Oatchi impacted my gameplay experience, though many players, fairly enough, complained that Oatchi's many abilities severely impacted the difficulty of the game or strategy required to complete it. Aside from just being a companion who walks alongside you and fights on your behalf, Oatchi will allow the player and all of their currently commanded Pikmin to jump on his back for a faster means of travel. On top of this, Oatchi features the first instance of a jumping ability in the Pikmin series, drastically changing the ways that levels could be designed and approached due to new types of verticality. This doesn't mean our furry friend can go everywhere, however. There are some new walls and other passageways that only the player and Pikmin can climb through, leaving the dog behind for the time being and limiting the player's options in these areas. While separated, the player can swap control between their character and Oatchi, similarly to Olimar and Louie in Pikmin 2, though with less of an explicit division of labor as could be expected from one of your explorers being a dog. However, Oatchi can still reach unique areas, activate switches, attack enemies, and even throw Pikmin when being controlled on his own. Taking over an ability that previously belonged to a Pikmin, Oatchi's powerful sense of smell can detect treasures that are buried just beneath the planet's surface, as white Pikmin could in the second game. He can also sniff out items of interest, like idle Pikmin or stranded castaways. His impressive nose also makes him much better at finding you than the Pikmin are, so he'll always come back once his task is complete. At the base camp, our rescue leader, Shepard, will offer to train Oatchi, improving all of his skills, from his speed to biting strength, and even the ability to heal himself outside of conflict. Once Oatchi is fully trained, there's honestly not much of a difference between the control of Pikmin 2 and 4, other than the fact that ledges are used as a point to force players to reconvene with their whole squad in certain areas, since Oatchi is the only character that can jump. Another commonly cited aspect of this game's difficulty, or lack thereof, is the power of our first new Pikmin type. Ice Pikmin follow the lineage of Purple and Rock Pikmin in previous entries as this adventure's heavy type. They can freeze enemies in a similar manner to the paralysis of the Ultra Bitter Spray in Pikmin 2, which turned enemies into rocks. When frozen, enemies can't attack and are left in a fragile state to be obliterated by the rest of the player's forces. And while these frosty soldiers are certainly overpowered in combat, I greatly appreciate their implementation alongside new elemental threats and enemies. These frozen Pikmin, when commanded in large numbers, can even solidify sizable bodies of water to cross on foot. Bodies of water in this entry can now be deeper than ever before, with our controlled character walking along the seafloor with any present blue Pikmin, while Oatchi and the ice Pikmin can float on top. A variety of new and returning ocean life make these aquatic settings much more lively than the puddles we've seen in previous entries that only partially gave blue Pikmin any space to play around. More poisonous enemies and obstacles were also created to give white Pikmin more chances to be useful, beyond a few gaseous spouts. This also gives more purpose and usefulness to the white Pikmin since Oatchi has taken over their digging abilities introduced back in Pikmin 2. While plenty of characters dating back to the GameCube days have made their returns, there are also numerous original monster designs for Pikmin 4, and plenty of elemental twists on classic creatures to bolster the bestiary. Every so often, in each level, the player will come across a leafy figure that looks a bit like a cross between Captain Olimar and a red Pikmin. This mysterious character will drag a castaway into a nearby cave, requiring the player to dive in for a Dandori battle. This mode, which can also be played by two players in the game's main menu, finds both competitors locked in a small area together as they attempt to drag the most treasure to their base in a short time limit. If the player has too much trouble with a Dandori challenge, they can ask for help from Dingo, as long as he's been rescued, who will clear the challenge for the player, though awarding them no metal or additional raw materials. Fun fact for the unfamiliar, these hybrid characters also seem to be a reference to the bad ending in Pikmin 1, in which Olimar is unable to repair his ship in time, and after his life support system shuts down, he is collected by the Pikmin and taken to their onion, where he is given new life as what could now be assumed to be a leafling. In a refreshing return, the caves in Pikmin 2 have been added back into this adventure after being absent in Pikmin 3. While they're no longer randomly generated, these underground segments add a substantial degree of playtime to the experience, and are the only place you can relax, plan, and explore with less of a threat of the passage of time. I say less of a threat because while time was frozen underground in Pikmin 2, it actually moves at 1/6 of the pace as felt on the surface in this fourth entry. As a side note while we're here, I don't really understand why your crewmates can talk to you in the caves when you're experiencing time at 1/6 of their pace, and considering they blurt out things far more than is necessary once the player has their bearings, I wish they had used the lack of communication with your team as an additional challenge in the caves, possibly justifying a scattered message now and then when a new function desperately needs to be explained in a way that can't just be demonstrated. Anyway, compared to the caves in Pikmin 2, the experience of those found in Pikmin 4 feel as though they're more of a challenge of the player's adaptability rather than management of limited units. While above ground, players can only command 3 types of Pikmin at a time. While inside caves, however, the player can have more than 3 types of Pikmin in their squad at a time, as this entry features far more opportunities to collect additional numbers and types of Pikmin underground beyond what you entered with. On top of the return of cave spelunking from Pikmin 2, the 4th entry also adds its own new form of adventure in night expeditions. During these missions, players are able to visit pre-approved areas in search of the extract of the rare luminol flower, which can be used to restore a leafling to their former self. During these night expeditions, players won't have access to the Onion and usual army of Pikmin, and will instead work exclusively with the new nocturnal glow Pikmin. Instead of the usual exploration-based gameplay of daytime Pikmin adventures, playing during nighttime puts players on the defensive, protecting one or more luminol structures until morning from predators that become more aggressive after dark. The glow Pikmin don't need to be plucked and will actually float directly to the player after being emitted from the luminol. These phosphorescent troops are resistant to all elements, though still take physical harm like every other Pikmin. Instead of a typical dash, glow Pikmin can actually merge into a ball of light referred to as a glow mob and powerfully crash into their enemies. Once the sun rises, glow Pikmin turn back into seeds with a ratio of 5 Pikmin to 1 seed. These seeds can be pulled from the player's item pack to summon this powerful Pikmin type either at night or even in elementally hazardous caves during the day. Just as in the caves, I think your crewmates interject a little too often during the night missions, blocking a substantial portion of the screen with their dialogue every time something remotely significant happens. The developers behind the Pikmin series have definitely figured out how to better utilize all of the available inputs on the controller to maximize the player's functions, which is very important for a strategy game of any kind, and usually why the genre appears on computers. Now on the Switch, however, there are plenty of available hotkeys and shortcuts to control your player character, Oatchi, and all of their loyal Pikmin with little to no trouble. Once the player collects the lineup trumpet, they'll have the old GameCube C-stick controls whenever holding down one of the shoulder buttons in order to fine-tune their miniature army's movements and easily scoop up piles of collectibles. A few specific commands can be bound to the controller's buttons for quick access with whatever functions the player deems most useful to themselves. One of the default quick commands at the player's disposal is the ability to disband the entire party except for the leading Pikmin type, in case the player needs to enter a dangerous situation or take on a specific elemental threat. A few other minute, though immediately notable quality of life features have been tweaked that are sure to be noticed by long-time fans of the series as well. For example, if Pikmin are already carrying an object, then a quick whistle will no longer distract them from their current job as it did in previous entries. This is a great, simple improvement that allows players to grab those stray Pikmin off to the side without interrupting their already assigned workers. The game will also automatically pause the player's throwing input whenever they've thrown enough Pikmin to take care of any given task, as an attempt to lessen any stray Pikmin being left behind once a task is complete. The player can pause the game to access their tablet, which is filled with various apps that will help them throughout the game. These include the world map, mission list, and all sorts of useful information to keep track of what you are doing and what else there is to do. This being a strategy game after all, and therefore requiring multitudes of different finely tuned inputs for maximum control over the player's units, it's important to have a catalog of all of these features and functions for quick access, so players can dust themselves off if they haven't played in a while, or explored a certain mechanic enough to understand its uses. Pikmin 4 is the first entry not to feature original Pikmin composer Hajime Wakai in the same role. However, we still received a powerful trio of musicians to take over his concepts. These three include Asuka Hayazaki, who worked on Pikmin 3, Mario Kart Wii, and a handful of Zelda titles, Soshi Abe, who previously contributed to Super Smash Bros. Ultimate and Metroid Dread, and Kenta Nagata, who was the music lead and the most senior member of the trio, with credits dating back to Mario Kart 64 in 1996. Other credits include The Legend of Zelda: The Wind Waker, Mario Kart 8, and Big Brain Academy. The sound design of Pikmin 4, as with every entry in the series, features a wonderful blend of natural, digital, and alien sounds to combine the many parallel themes in the world design itself. The soundtrack comprises roughly 200 pieces, including plenty of flourishes and vamps of various lengths to tie several themes, areas, and mechanics together without relying on the exact same piece every time. Numerous bosses and tough enemies are given their own layers to the overall environment theme in order to make combat musically dynamic. The nighttime music is some of the most unsettling in the game, supplementing the intensity felt within these defensive segments with some otherworldly sounding percussion and warbly sound effects that all dynamically adapt to the urgency of the player's conflict with nocturnal threats. Overall, the music throughout the game is best described as whimsical, charming, and multifaceted. I'm a huge proponent of spoiler-free reviews, so I have been and will be showing very little endgame footage, and I'll only speak briefly on it. However, it has to be mentioned and applauded that this game, following in the steps of Pikmin 2, has far more post-credit content than pre-credit. It's no surprise twist that the game continues after the primary objective has been completed, but it's such a satisfying amount of content to be continuously greeted with that it really makes the whole game worth not only its price, but its amount of time and effort expected to experience the game to its fullest. It also feels as though the developers of this entry knew exactly how to push returning fans' buttons in order to both tease and reward longtime players with nostalgic features and references. This universe is just as charming and pleasant as it has been since its first appearance in 2001. It's also more expansive and detailed than ever before, as this fourth entry combines and remixes many of the best features from both Pikmin 2 and Pikmin 3, while also adding plenty of its own interesting flair. The puzzle designs are so wildly different from each other due to the variety of Pikmin that have now been introduced, and can therefore also be approached in so many different ways thanks to the wide array of mechanics at the player's fingertips. This is one of those games that's both reasonable and enjoyable to 100% as you work your way through, though it's not an obligation. It's simply fun to explore every nook of this game's world, both above and below ground, and there's good incentive to do so, with the myriad of rewards that increase the player's enjoyment of the game even further. Overall, Pikmin 4 is a wholly satisfying experience that was well worth the decade-long wait, and offers a seemingly unending buffet of adventurous content that can be easily understood and enjoyed by new and returning players alike, continuing the Pikmin franchise's tradition of being an accessible and charming strategy game for all audiences. That is what's so great about Pikmin 4. Thank you all for joining us on this episode of What's So Great About Gaming, as we navigated the long-awaited world of Pikmin 4. If you want to support the channel, be sure to like, subscribe, ring the bell, and do whatever else the algorithm demands of us to keep up with our favorite content. Also, consider joining our gaming community on Discord or watching bonus videos on Patreon. If you want to hear what's great about another game, check out the link to our last episode, Half-Life 2, on screen or in the description, and let us know your thoughts on Pikmin 4 and what games you'd like to see in the future. Thanks again for watching. Now go play a great game. We'll see you next time.